and welcome to another Sunbelt Spotlight. Today, we're doing a little something different. It's the holiday season, and we're very, very excited to have one of our authors who has written this absolutely wonderful children's book for the holiday season. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Cory. Cory, one of her favorite things to do is to read books out to young children. She was a voracious reader as a child growing up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. But she did not hone her read aloud skills until she had her own two daughters, Kelsey Dawn and Brianne Nicole. Little did she recognize how important it was to read aloud to children until she started taking teaching courses. She thought she was having fun doing something her children loved. Eventually, those courses added to an undergraduate degree in early childhood education from the University of Calgary. Her and her family moved to Arizona in 1985, where Cory taught kindergarten for 10 years in Phoenix. How lucky she felt to read many, many books to many, many children. Cory became aware of what features of books resonated with young children, and as she completed a master's degree in elementary education, she recognized how children's books taught vocabulary, information about the world, and how we all can connect with each other through children's literature. Early literacy became the basis of her doctoral studies, and she earned a PhD at Arizona State University in 1998. Teaching others how to teach reading became her passion, and every college class she taught opened with a read aloud of children's books related to the topic of her lecture. Dr. Hansen retired in 2016 after 18 years of teaching and research at Arizona State University, but she still gets to read children's books aloud to her grandchildren, Connor and Emily. She feels very fortunate to spend summers in Invermere, British Columbia, where she's working on her next children's book, and she winters in Arizona. She shares this good life with her husband, Dr. Stan Howard, and their three dogs, Brewster, Cooper, and Letty. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Cory to you and her wonderful book, which she will be reading to you. Cory, welcome aboard and to a Sunbelt Spotlight, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for that wonderful, warm welcome, Diane.
You're welcome.
Coyote Claus, a Southwestern Desert Tale, written by Cory Cooper Hansen, artwork by Mark A. Hicks, produced by Sunbelt Publications. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the land, desert creatures were stirring in Sonoran sand.
The Sonoran Desert is the hot and dry region that stretches between southeastern California, southwestern Arizona, and down into Mexico.
The agave blooms opened in the cool night air in hopes that the bats soon would be there.
Agave plants can bloom as early as Christmas Eve in the southernmost tip of the Sonoran Desert. Bats and bees pollinate their blossoms.
The tortoise were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of prickly pear danced in their heads.
Desert tortoise hibernate during the cool winter months. Their favorite food is the prickly pear cactus. They even eat the spines.
And Perro in his basket, and I in my bed, had just settled down for the long night ahead.
Many people who live in the Southwest are Spanish speakers. Perro is the Spanish word for dog.
When out on the mesa there arose such a howl, I knew in a moment Coyote did prowl.
Coyote is a member of the dog family that lives wild in the desert. His nighttime howls are the song of the Southwest.
Within my adobe I considered the sound, then opened the door and looked all around.
Adobe homes are made from sun-dried bricks of mud and straw. They are warm in the winter and cool in the summer.
The moon on the crest of the Ocotillo give the luster of midday to objects below.
The Ocotillo cactus grows long, thin branches that have sharp spines hiding in its green leaves. Bright red-orange flowers bloom in the spring.
When, what to my wondering eye should show up, but a desert dog band with one tiny gray pup.
Baby coyotes are called pups. They live and play in a den until they are around 10 weeks old. Then their mom takes them out to learn about hunting.
With a sly old coyote so grizzled and lean, I knew in a moment what the racket did mean.
Coyotes look like middle-sized light gray or tan dogs, but they look rangier and carry their bushy tails low.
Sharper than cactus, his yip-yips they came. The animals he wanted, he called them by name.
Coyotes use different sounds to communicate. Sharp yips follow howls and let others know who is in the neighborhood.
Come, come, javelina, each kangaroo rat. Here rattler, here rabbit, here gecko and bat.
Many Sonoran Desert creatures are nocturnal. They sleep during the day when it is so hot and are active at night.
To the top of the ridge, to the top of mesquite. Now howl with me, howl with me, howl with me, sweet.
The mesquite tree drops pods enjoyed by many desert animals. People cook with the wood because it burns slowly and gives the food a sweet flavor.
As dry leaves that before the late monsoons do fly, when they meet with a tumbleweed mount to the sky.
Monsoon rainstorms arrive late in the Sonoran summer. Plants and animals depend on these sudden storms for much of their water.
So up to the mesa the creatures they crept. Their safety in numbers they thought with each step.
Mesas are desert hills with long, flat tops. Mesa is a Spanish word that means table.
And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the trail the creatures still worried and one sad little wail.
Coyote is a smart and fast predator. He usually hunts for mammals, but will eat anything, even fruits and vegetables.
As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the arroyo, Coyote came with a bound.
The sudden rainstorms of monsoons wash out low areas of the desert. Dry desert gullies, called arroyos, are left behind.
He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his whiskers were shiny where his supper was put.
Coyotes use their keen senses to find food and avoid danger. They listen carefully to hear other animals and use their sharp noses to find food.
He called out once more. The creature shook with the noise. Come here, howled Coyote, come here, desert boys.
Coyotes have special areas they call their own. They mark their territories and howl to tell others where they live.
The javelinas agreed, their snouts up in a pack. We've too often been a coyote snack.
Javelinas are wild, pig-like animals that live near mesquite and prickly pear. They eat, sleep, and forage in packs, leaving a musty odor behind.
The kangaroo rats hid behind an old gate, and each told a tale of losing a mate.
Kangaroo rats are perfect animals for living in the desert. They can get all the water they need from seeds. They only come out at the cool of the night.
The rattler admitted his tail was no help. Rabbit just shuddered and gave a small yelp.
The quick rattlesnake has dangerous fangs. They don't always rattle before striking. Cottontail rabbits are plentiful and seen both night and day.
A gecko claw pointed, no tail said it all, but Bat said, don't worry, it's a different call.
Geckos are small lizards with long tails. If a predator grabs its tail, it falls off, allowing the gecko to escape. Bats spread pollen so cactus fruit can grow.
The small pup implored, it's past time I was fed. Coyote looked down and began unpacking instead.
Father coyotes help feed their pups. They hunt while the mothers are in the den with the babies and come back with food.
A shrug of his shoulders, a paw to his head, soon gave me to know they had nothing to dread.
Coyote's slyness has earned him the name Trickster in Native American folklore. Many stories of his conniving nature have been told.
He howled not a peep, just laid out his treats, insects and cactus, what each creature eats.
Cactus feeds the javelinas, kangaroo rats, rabbits, and bats. Geckos eat insects, and rattlesnakes eat small mammals.
And laying his forepaw aside of his snout, a different pitch of a howl did come out.
Howling is one way coyotes communicate. Pups are called with a hoof. Young coyotes play or yelp and say too rough. Barks are warning signs.
We're creatures together, all under the sun. Tonight let's remember and give thanks as one.
The animals of the southwestern Sonoran Desert have adapted to survive in this harsh environment of extreme temperatures and little water.
Then I heard him exclaim, ere they loped out of sight, Feliz Navidad, and to all a good night.
Feliz Navidad means Happy Christmas in Spanish and is used to share in December celebrations.
Thank you, Sunbelt Publications, for bringing this book to life.
I was going to say, wonderful, wonderful. There is a chat button. If you have a question or would like to ask Cory anything about this story or about herself, please put it in the chat. I would like to ask Cory, how did you go about creating this story, or what made you decide to write about this Christmas story? How did you select that?
Oh, Diana, I'm so glad you asked that. One evening in Phoenix, Arizona, on Christmas Eve, I was sitting outside and listening to all the noise the animals were making in the desert. And it struck me how different this, it was from the traditional tale when not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. And so a coyote howled, and I got to thinking, and that's how the story came about.
Wow, that's very cool. And I know you're working on a new book. Can you give us a sneak peek or an idea of what you're working on next?
I would love to share that with you. The one I'm working on now is called Feet by Mesquite. And it's a guessing book game for young children where the first page they'll see a mesquite with a roadrunner foot sticking out of it. And they guess what animal is behind the vegetation. And then it confirms it on the next page saying Roadrunners Race by Mesquite. And it continues like that. So Mark has agreed to illustrate it as well. And I just want to give a shout out to Mark for his incredible talent to present desert creatures in authentic and a little whimsical way.
How did you find Mark, or did you know about him as an artist, or how did you discover him and get him involved in your project?
Well, I did teach public school for 10 years in Arizona, and his wife actually taught at one of the schools that I did work in when I was doing some research as an assistant professor. And so she was telling me about her husband, native Arizonan, who loved and was very intrigued with the animals of the Sonoran Desert. So I contacted him and we hit it off, and I believe we have a really nice relationship going.
Well, I think you have the start of a relationship that's going to lead to several new books, which is kind of exciting. So that is
I
wonderful.
certainly hope so.
Yeah. So you're saying that with your children, just reading to them, all of this led to your own career and teaching. So it just all evolved from you simply being a mom reading to your children. Is that the way it all came about?
Yes, honestly, that is exactly what happened. And I found that I loved reading stories to my children. I just kind of thought that's what you did, but I didn't know why. And I saw them grow and live the books that we were reading. And yeah, so it all came from there. And just my love of children's literature has followed me throughout my career and continues to enrich my life.
Well, tell us a little bit for those folks that are going to be seeing the video as it's being posted, why it is important to read to small children.
The most important one of there's many reasons, but one of the most important reasons to read aloud to young children is that it's not just the story, it's the routine, the being held, the feeling loved, the hearing the language. And the language of books is very different than conversational language. So it helps them understand when they go to formal education, when they're in preschool and kindergarten and early elementary, they learn that book language so that it helps them understand when they're learning how to read because they have the vocabulary to understand it. And one of the things that is really important as well, and a big push came through with No Child Behind Act a long time ago, was to include nonfiction information in young children's books so that they're learning about the world at the same time that they're learning about, the joy of story and the interest in, how they can relate to it. And I think for this book, a lot of the information that I've received from adults, interestingly enough, is that the nonfiction piece at the bottom of each page helps them connect to the desert in ways they never would have thought. The story becomes deeper to them. It's interesting to both young children and to adults. So certainly to get back to your question, children, the emotional part of being read to is so important. The learning about the language of books, the learning about the world, and also it develops that connect. And young children know exactly what the world is like, life is like within their home, and just as for adults, it takes you out of your immediate surroundings, and you learn about different ways of thinking, different ways of acting, how other people have the same thoughts that you do and the same dreams that you do. And it's awesome. And I think it's really become more apparent how important it is to read to young children in the last few years. And it's just fun.
Do you have tips to new moms on, the best times of the day to read, when to read, the circumstances, how to kind of prepare to read? Can you give us some background on that with your educational background and teaching?
Sure. The traditional bedtime story is always important. It helps children calm down. It helps them, just take a breath from the day, and that routine is really important as well. Some parents have come to me, and young moms and young dads, and they say, "Oh, my child doesn't want to sit down and read a book." So read to them while they're in their high chairs. Read to them while they're in the bathtub. You can get that story of that language of literacy into them any time of the day. So don't feel discouraged if they don't want to sit down and read at night.
Well,
And it's
that's
never too early to start. I read to my children in utero.
oh, geez.
um, it, Even though they don't understand what they're hearing about in the books, they're making those connections to being loved and how to hold a book, all the things that are so important in early literacy.
Well, do you have any kind of closing comments that you'd like to make for viewers about your book or about reading to small children? Please let us have some closing comments if you have some.
Okay, one of the things, the board books that are available for young children now have made a big difference. And when we talk about reading with young children, sometimes it's just those toddlers and babies chewing on the board books. But books become part of their lives. Books become part of how to do life, so that's important. And the other thing is that children need to see the important people in their lives reading as well. So especially for little boys, when they see daddy reading, they want to be just like their daddies, right? So when they see daddy read, and moms and teachers and caregivers, but when they see important people reading, it helps them, they want to be able to do it. And learning how to read is really, really hard work. And so that's a way that we can encourage our children to struggle through all the things that they have to do to become literate.
You know, one final question, you know, with this COVID period that we're in, kids are a little bit restless. You know, how can reading help to soothe them and comfort them during these times?
Um, One of the challenges is to get children to get involved in the book. So, for instance, in Coyote Claus, you can act it out. And there's many, many other stories that children can act out the actions, they can perform the actions. They can, when Coyote howls, the children can howl. And when the little pup implored its cat, past time I was fed, get them to, use their whole bodies to become the book. And that helps them, first of all, to, comprehend. It develops their vocabulary immensely. And I guess my last word of advice to people reading to young children is the first time you read a book, you should read it from the beginning to the end. And then read it a second time and encourage the children to ask questions during the second time. Because that way, good authors always have questions in a book. That's what makes the book good. And so if the children listen to it and wonder, and then just give them a minute to go to the next page, they figure it out themselves. And that is a very rewarding part of reading. Now, of course, if they ask questions, please let them ask questions. But that's kind of a goal for them to work in your read alouds, to read it, from beginning to end, and then go back and talk about it. So for instance, from Coyote Claus, where it says, "and perro in my basket," what a young child will do is look in the basket and figure out that perro means dog. And so we can share those things with children as well.
So it'd be kind of fun once you've read it a couple of times before you turn the page, and you can ask them, what's next?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so they can think about what is coming next.
And when predictable books like that and the children start to memorize books and can just read them by memorization, that's the first step in learning how to read. So parents and caregivers, again, don't discount that. That's a big step for children to make.
Excellent, very excellent. Well, Cory, thank you so much for doing this reading. And I also want to kind of mention again to everyone that if you're interested in this book, check on our website. It is discounted, especially for you for the holidays. We want you to have this book for your children, for those that you love. It's a wonderful Christmas present. And also want to remind you that, we do the Spotlight Talks every couple of weeks, and our next guest will be talking about our new California basket book. And we'll have some, so please check on our website, get more information to learn about this really incredible book that's been years in production that really does feature the masterpiece basket makers of California. So we hope you can join us for another Spotlight in a couple of weeks. And Cory, again, thank you so much for the reading, and thank you for the tips for the parents and people that are interested in children's books. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Rebecca.